Usually you have the music.
Yeah, I actually I was doing, but then you ping, so I think then I changed to. Put it on music. Just give me 2 minutes. I think, Hi Chaminda, how are you? Good to see you again. I think Sakthis will be joining in a few minutes. So how is the COVID situation in Sri Lanka? Your voice is, I think you are on mute.
Yeah, not so good, not so good. It's, I mean, in lockdown, and like hopefully, yeah, things will settle down.
Okay, great. I think this session actually is going to be like it's you and Sakthis, so maybe a few minutes and the last will be more on discussion. So if I think he's also online, so let's see.
Yeah, sure.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining today. We are going to start in a few minutes. I have a few announcements. Hi Saktish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think let me make you a few presenter.
Okay.
I have a few announcements before hand over to both of you. I think let me just go through quickly.
Sure.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining today. We are Microsoft Azure Singapore community, and if you are the first time, we are part of Azure Singapore community. And so if you're the first time, so you can join our Facebook group, MS Technical Communities SG, and we have also a meetup group. So all our sessions are announced on meetupgroup.com, and we also have a YouTube channel. So all our session recordings will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you like, if you want to see our previous sessions, you can go and subscribe there. And apart from Azure Singapore community, we also have a data community, we have a .NET community and ML community. So all comes under Microsoft Technical Community, and all sessions are announced under MSSGUG. So if you are interested on other topics like data or Power Apps or ML, so there are a couple of other sessions going on. It's on weekly, monthly basis. So you can go and register here. And if you want to present or organize any one of the sessions, so you can contact any one of the organizers. Me and Saktish is also one of the organizer of this. And few sessions we have done in past, really nice sessions. It's like Kubernetes on Azure Admin, FinOps, and Terraforms, CI/CD pipelines. We have done also a couple of series. Like in this past December, we have done DevOps series. Chaminda have already presented one session in that. So if you want to see all those series, you can go and see in our YouTube channels. All sessions are available there. And after that, we have done API building series and FinOps series. So all these sessions are available on our YouTube channel. And in today's, we have a really two interesting topic today. One is end-to-end Terraform orchestration for Azure, and second one is Supercharge your Kubernetes experience with the VS Code. In first session, I think Sakthis and Chaminda is going to present on Terraform, so end-to-end orchestration, and this session is will be a short but more on discussion as well. So if you have any doubts, you want to clarify anything, I think both are Chaminda and Sakthis both are expertise in Azure and infrastructure. So I think it will be really great to ask any of your doubt or anything. And next session is going to be on Kubernetes. So Swaminathan is going to explain on like experience on VS Code deployment on Kubernetes and how you can scale the apps using Kubernetes. And apart from their profile, so Saktish is Microsoft MVP, and he is a technical director on Consult system. He is also having he's also an organizer for Microsoft Singapore technical community, and he have worked on different it's like projects on architect projects and yeah, variety of infrastructure projects. And apart from that, Chaminda is also a Microsoft MVP from Sri Lanka. He's a principal consultant, and he have a lot of DevOps related books. So if you want really interested, so you can take a look. And all these profiles, if you want to connect with them, you can also connect with them on via LinkedIn, and this Chaminda blogs are really helpful, so you can go and take a look. And about Swaminathan, he is architect and Musk, and he's also Microsoft MVP from India. So if you are interested, you can just follow them on Twitter. And related to today's session, we have done few sessions in past. So like we have done how to monitor a Kubernetes cluster or via open source tools such as Prometheus and Grafana. That was done I think last month by Nilesh. Nilesh is also a Microsoft MVP. And this Chaminda have also, you can see the Chaminda session on DevOps he have done in past. That was a part of the DevOps series. And related to today's sessions of infrastructure Terraform, we have done one session in CI/CD, building CI/CD with Terraform by Mohammed Adwan. So you can take a look. This all sessions recordings are available on the YouTube channel. So this is our YouTube playlist, Azure Singapore sessions. You can just go and subscribe there. And we also doing one session on 4th of October. This is our upcoming session. If you want, if you are interested to do the certification on Kubernetes as a developer or administrator, so this session will be really interesting for you because Mama Faisal, he's a global solution architect at Microsoft. He's going to present his journey, how he got certified in Kubernetes and administrator and developer. So yeah, I think this, if you are interested, please join. This session is already announced on our meetupgroup.com. And if you are interested any data related topic, there is a session happening on 30th September. So you can go and join there. This is also announced on meetupgroup.com and Azure Data Community, which is part of Microsoft Technical Community. And there is also a conference happening on 16th and 15th and 16th October. That's a Southeast Asia conference. So there will be a lot of really good sessions and speakers. If you want, please go and register on AMSAC Asia and new register. And this is our YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go and subscribe. You can scan the QR code and subscribe on our YouTube channel. All the session recordings are available here. In past, we have done some chartbuster sessions. So these are chartbuster sessions playlist, Azure Singapore session, same. And before hand over to Saktish and Chaminda, there are a few reminders. Please keep yourself on mute. And if you have any questions, please use a raise hand feature. And this session is being recorded. Please spread the words on social media if you like. Yeah, I think you guys can go carry on.
Thank you, Asif. Very good evening, everyone. And I really thank you for joining this evening. So I understand. I hope you already know or a bit more on what is coming in the session from Asif. So he gave us a great introduction. So we're going to go and jump in straight. And just presenting my screen. You guys able to see our screen? My screen?
Yeah, we can see.
All right. Okay. So yeah, again, thanks, and excellent introduction to our community was given by Asif earlier. So we are the largest community in Singapore, I would say, for Microsoft technologies, and run purely by Microsoft MVPs for community. So without much other focus on the community, let's go into the introduction. I think introduction, Asif gave us a very good introduction, but so I talk about a few words that we both work on. Long-time friends. We were MVP. Our journey, MVP journey, started like 5-6 years ago. So we've been working on various projects and so on. So this session, we wanted to try in a new format that rather than typical, level 300, level 400 kind of thing. Instead of that, why don't we have a much more real-world experience and talk a little bit in a discussion forum, so that will help you to understand what is coming up in terms of Azure or Terraform in specific. This topic is very specifically on Terraform. So, Chaminda, why don't you start by giving us an introduction? What's going on with Terraform? Why this buzz, and what's Terraform?
Yep. Basically, Terraform. Thanks, Sakthis. Good evening to everyone. So basically, Terraform is something we can write in a declarative way, targeting multiple clouds. But our focus is mainly on Azure. So even for Azure Cloud, we can create declarative syntax way of defining infrastructure. Basically, main component would be having some sort of resources defined, and you can refer to existing resources as data, and you can utilize those things and define a declarative syntax, which actually defines how your resources are deployed in cloud. So once you have these definitions done, what you can do is actually doing some sort of initialization, which is actually doing apply the providers, etc. So for example, if you are doing Azure based deployments, it will be Azure resource provider. So those things will be initialized, and then you can execute a plan and see how it really going to get applied. So it's before applying, you can go ahead and see how the resources would be created and what would be created, and with what kind of properties or what kind of attributes. And once you see that, you can actually go ahead and say, okay, apply now. So in that case, it will go ahead and apply the resources on top of whatever the target cloud platform. So and it would generate something called a state file. So what does this state file means is it would keep the state of whatever you are applying as resources. So Terraform works on this state file. So it relies on the state file to understand what is actually deployed into the cloud environment. So there's multiple options you can keep your state file, which we will discuss down the line when we are having the discussion. But some people advise you to keep it in Azure Blob. Some people advise to keep it in Terraform Cloud. But we have had a different thought, and we can discuss on it later.
Great.
So basically, Terraform is declarative. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I want to just barge in there, Chaminda. So Chaminda, just to give the audience an example, I purely come from pure infra architect standpoint. Chaminda is actually on the developer side. So you see that these two worlds already merging in terms of your career growth and how the future is going to hold. So from an IT pro standpoint, I want to just have a few words so that maybe if there is an IT pro guys in the audience, they will be a little bit having an insight. So usually what we do go to the portal.azure.com and click, build this, build that, connect this VM, connect that VM to VNet. All those things, what you do is you do in a manual way. So Terraform being a declarative, what happens is you pre-plan everything and you connect everything together in a way it's like a batch file. Like imagine like a big batch file, right? So the batch file is having, okay, map the L drive first, map the printer second. I think most of IT Pro careers, the guys have written a batch file. I'm pretty sure there is no one who did not write a batch file. So imagine like this is like a very big batch file with more complex parameters and so on. So using that, we connect everything together and then apply one time. So instead of going multiple clicks around the UI of the Azure portal, you just say, okay, deploy one time, and then it deploys immediately. So no need to go do manual workaround. So that one information I want to give in terms of the IT Pro people. So Chaminda, I'll let you continue with the next option. So you want to touch base a little bit on this and.
Yep. I already told a bit about this. Like, I mean, it can target any cloud platform when it comes to Terraform. And the main component would be keeping the state. Now, when we are thinking about security aspect of it, keeping it in Terraform Cloud, maybe people will say it's okay, but I don't know if I don't trust to keep that there. I should be able to keep it somewhere really safe, because like Terraform state would contain all the information about your resources, the IDs, and even sometimes secret information. It's like secret information in the sense like how you deployed your resources, IP addresses, and all those things. So it's a bit dangerous to put it in public cloud is my thinking and like our understanding. So like we have had an alternative options for this one. So but like basically there'll be set of variables which is defining how the resources should be created, and then there'll be a provider which is can be Azure provider or like a different cloud provider. And then there will be some resource instances and data instances, and there's a modularized approach as well, which you can implement complex things as modules, and then you reuse these modules in your Terraform code. But we can I mean, there's lot more into Terraform, but like we will stop it there, because I think there is a couple of Terraform sessions already done, so we can move on to discuss, I think, our own experience and what we have accomplished.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I think so. Now the context is set. So let's go into the topic of the today. What does end-to-end means, right? So one of the engagements that we had, we decided to do a end-to-end orchestration, meaning that no touching the Azure portal. No, not even nothing to do with Azure portal. So everything should be configuration should be coming from Terraform. Could someone mute their mic? Yeah. So that means it doesn't matter what kind of architecture it comes in, whether you choose a Palo Alto next generation firewall, or you choose a checkpoint firewall, or you have 10 subnets, and you have 20 load balancers, you have like X number of Azure accounts. So our objective was, when we started, we wanted to have 100% orchestration. That is what we call it as end-to-end. So we went ahead and created in a way that the architecture was built first, and then we started coding the module part, what Chaminda was explaining in the earlier part. So even to an extent that virtual machines with custom images, like there are publishers who put their own virtual machines as an image in the Azure marketplace. Even that one, we wanted to have it in a pulled from Terraform and then deploy. So this was the objective, or this was what we wanted to do, and this is what we call as end-to-end orchestration. Is it possible in today's world? Yes, it is very much possible in today's world with all the advancements that happened in Terraform and other things. So we can definitely say that irrespective of whatever your orchestration, whatever your architecture, whatever components you use, Terraform will play the key role in terms of doing it as an end-to-end orchestration. Yeah, that's one thing. So Chaminda, I just want to ask you, in the project, what was your excited, what was your excitement? What excitement you had? What are the positive things there when we started? Would you share some of the angle to the audience?
Sure. The main thing was like it was fair to say it has really good documentation. Compared to Microsoft documentation, maybe a little less, but compared to many other open source and like other tool sets available, the documentation was pretty comprehensive. So figuring out okay how to do something is pretty much easier. So that's really good thing about Terraform, like which we enjoyed a lot when we are doing these discoveries. Of like how to implement things and how to get things done, and it's like basically you can write your code, and like even setting up Terraform is just downloading your exe and getting it extracted to your machine, and then like you can just run it from a local folder and test it out, so targeting your cloud. So that's pretty much enjoyable. So like you need a SPN details, service principal details from Azure. That's the only requirement that you need, and then you can test it out locally without any pipelines or anything. Just test it out your development, whatever happening in this thing. So that was really fun. And when it comes to pipelines, okay, we had a different strategy which we can talk later. But
yeah. Good. I want to just let the IT pro folks primarily in the audience to know that this is coming. Your clicking career life is already end, in my view. So people who still use Portal should be learning Terraform and move on to even there's Microsoft already come up with some language Bicep. So they have to start looking into it so that it will help their career to move forward in a much better way. So having said that, Chaminda, I'll leave it to you the next slides, which gives about our architecture.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say why we have approached it this way. So one thing that we were really worried about is keeping our state file outside of our scopes, like say even Terraform cloud. Like why do we want to put it in a different cloud, or like even in our subscriptions? So we decided, okay, keep it in our own repo so that it's totally secure and like only accessible by whoever we grant explicit permissions. So we are 100% certain that we are not exposing our state of Terraform at all. So what we have done is like we have totally leveraged the capabilities of Azure DevOps on top of Terraform. So basically, we have implemented Terraform in a very simplified way because we could have gone in and implemented a modular app-based approach and like complex Terraform codes, but that would be a nightmare when it comes to maintenance. Maybe some Terraform advocates may not agree with me, and they might come up and say, okay, Terraform has these capabilities and like modularizing and all those things. But what matters to us is actually having the simplicity of a solution which can be maintained easily and deployed independently of each other. Because in projects that we have worked on had multiple VNets peered, and then inside each of those VNets there were several subnets which is having different set of resources. So our approach was deploy not into a even VNet using a single pipeline. We were targeting a subnet using a single pipeline. So it was purely isolated code, and there's no dependency. Just deploy your subnet without worrying about the rest of it. So there were some data references and dependency on the other pipelines, but that is done in a very simplified way. And Terraform, when it comes to sharing variables, etc., that is not a straightforward approach possibility. So what we have done is, instead of trying to implement something complex in Terraform, we made it simple by keeping in shared files or something when it comes to global variables or something, we can create something global variables TF file and share it. And then we, in the time of building the package, what we are doing is copying it over to a single location and make it available to each and every package that we deploy to using different pipelines. So that's how we simplified the handling. And we used the capability of Azure DevOps variable groups and the substitution capability of variables to enable only single instance is defined for any particular value, and it gets automatically substituted, and always very simple and easy to maintain, because you have to focus on one particular variable group when it comes to a particular set of subnet resources. So it's so simplified and it's easy to maintain. And I think Sakthis, if I ask you, like, I think you're already enjoying the maintainability of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the nightmare is always the O&M, right? Operation and maintenance. So when we started, I was really worried that part on the O&M part. But when we started building out, it came out very nicely. So if you look at the picture, there are three environments and then three separate isolated things. So which means that when I want to do something in the UAT, it will be done on one particular area. So the UAT gets updated on everything. So this is the operation and maintenance I'm talking about, not going into portal.ui, portal.azure and click on something to change the VNet or even add a NSG rule. Everything was done inside the repo. So a particular repo gets updated, and then the bill, and that was actually brilliantly orchestrated by Chaminda. So the isolation gave us the nice view on how you control your environment. So I want to just take this part, right? So this one Chaminda will touch in later, but if you look at it, daily in a day-to-day operations, we want to change one network security group. Okay, what really happens is the code engineer actually goes and changes the code in a particular format. And then once it is done, it actually goes into the predetermined pipeline with approval and everything. So in a way, this change is been happening for the last few years. But then now it becomes mandatory that this is the way of going forward for any infra maintenance or infra O&M or infra orchestration is going to be this way. Going forward, I'm pretty sure that everyone, I already see a lot of projects, tenders that requires infrastructure as a code as a mandatory. They won't allow you to do manual work simply because O&M and this whole process really we had O&M in mind. It was from the day one. So okay, today we write this. What happens when this guy wants to add a data disk? Add a remove an interface, add an interface. All are done from a Terraform layer. So Chaminda, I leave it to you on this to further expand on the functional part.
Yeah, actually, on top of what Sakthis said, like we actually managed to limit the amount of code writing required as well. Like, so we leverage Azure DevOps capabilities a lot. So say, for example, if you want, existing machine to be added with a disk, it would be just a matter of setting up a few parameters in Azure DevOps instead of even touching the code in Terraform. So even to get a new machine added in the same format or something, it was just setting up a couple of parameters and add an entry in configuration again in configuration parameter in Azure DevOps. So basically, we could add additional subnets, additional rules, or additional virtual machines, disks, without even touching the Terraform code, because the way we structure these very simple building blocks and reuse them in our code and managing it with a simple set of variables. And variables were grouped in such a nice way, like if you want to have a particular subnet virtual machine, then you know exactly which variable group to go and add a virtual machine. So that's how we orchestrated in whenever it comes to complex projects.
Great. Yeah, so sticking to the point on keeping it short. So we're going to go and this is our last slide. So we're going to go and start the sharing part so we can start seeing our faces again. Right. So So is there any questions? Anyone interested to ask anything?
Actually, there are a few questions. One is by, I think, is by Muhammad Aslam. So he said that he had created AKS cluster using Terraform, and now he need to keep updated AKS for the latest version and its nodes. So if you do outside Terraform, how to keep Terraform file sync with the state file sync then?
Chaminda, you want to?
So what he's asking is like if he keeps the Terraform file out of Azure, is it?
No, can I ask?
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So what I have done is I have created my private AKS cluster using Terraform with a module. Now in Terraform, in AKS, you know that every month Microsoft releases new version of Kubernetes, and we need to upgrade it, right? Now, what I'm saying here is because our workload is running onto AKS, we cannot run our Terraform script just with a new upgraded version because it has to drain out, right? Now we have to go with each and every node and drain them out and then upgrade that with the newer version. So if we are doing that manually, or in some other way outside Terraform, then my Terraform's state file is going out of sync. Now, next time when I run Terraform again, it will see, oh, this is not the one that I am supposed to do, right? And then there will be conflict. How to handle that, especially for AKS. For other than AKS, everything looks quite good with Terraform, but with AKS, I feel still it's very complex.
Yeah, I mean, in Terraform world, you can do a state import and update your state. That's one approach that you can take for sure. And then you will be having the sync between your state file and the Kubernetes, whatever the changes you have manually applied. But definitely you might have to, like, if you have done any like specific configuration changes, you might have to update your code as well, like then do a state import. So that is one particular possible solution that comes into my mind.
Right. And one more thing, we are facing here is, so with Terraform, you need to have one service principal, which has owner rights on the subscriptions. Right. We wanted not to use owner, role. We wanted to use something like contributor. Is it possible?
It's possible, given that like you create your resource groups manually, right? That's I mean, maybe using a script or something, you create your resource groups and you have the subscription assigned to those resource groups as a contributor. Then yes, but if you want to deploy resource groups, etc., you need the ownership, I think.
Sure.
Hey guys, if you have any further questions, you can ask because it's like more on discussion. So if you have any questions related to Terraform or some related topic, so you can ask. Hey Chaminda, I have one question. It's like how it's the different from the other ISC tools like Plumi or Bicep. Like what's the advantage of using Terraform compared to other?
Okay. Using Terraform would be advantageous when it comes to, like, if you are deploying your resources on Azure and then thinking of like maybe in future you might need to deploy on any other platforms, cloud platforms. Yeah, like you can build your team expertise in a particular infrastructure as code technology, where you can have a team which is ready to deploy to any cloud. So that is the main advantage. But there is a caveat as well, because like Bicep in Azure world, it is more up to date. I mean, in the sense, like whenever preview features released, Bicep would be ready with it. So if you're only Azure only, like say if your client is particularly Azure only, I would say Bicep would be the way to go. I mean, yeah, like we are Azure, so but go to Bicep. But like when it comes to Terraform, like you can build the capability of having multiple cloud possibilities. That's it.
Yeah, because we were doing something like I was confused on Plumi, because Plumi is also having you can write the code in native language like the C# or Python. So I was confused. We should learn but when I learned about the Terraform, I think it was quite easy because they have modules and like quite easy to do that. So, but yeah, I feel both are almost the way you can do that.
Yeah, Pulumi is really good. I think, like, I mean, that's really good because you can write it in any language like Python or C# if you wish to. But yeah, again, like Pulumi, Terraform, everything is having a bit of lag behind cloud resources getting released. So that would be there.
I think Lohit also replied that Bicep is a native to Azure and officially maintained. So there's one question from Irakli. I think he's there. Maybe I think Irakli, you can unmute and can ask directly also if you have. Do you guys recommend any best practice to keep the state files safe? And obviously the version need to be enabled on the storage account. But what else would you turn on?
For the state files, when you are using Terraform, like my thinking is always if you can keep it in an internal repo, like you can actually, what we have done is in our pipelines, we have made sure our pipeline code is automatically pushing things into our repo. I mean, special repo which is keeping the state. So it is so secured, nobody can access. So it's not in cloud, it's not in storage. The advantage is, like, say if you're going from dev UAT environment kind of thing, or like UAT environment, or your staging environment into production, so you don't need anything other than the service principal. If you have the service principal, you don't have to create additional blob storage or anything to keep state, or you don't have to worry about it. You just deploy your pipeline. That's it.
Yeah, I think similar I have done before. Means like in Azure pipeline, I have created the service principal connection, and that was a feature available. So you don't need to expose your means like your subscription, and then that will be very helpful for connecting to Azure or. So in that way, I think we can keep safe of our states files. Yeah.
So,
do you have any best practice or recommendation, on using Terraform or DevOps? And there is also, for GitHub Actions. So how exactly, we should choose either Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions, or what your take will be on this?
GitHub Action is the way forward, I believe. So it's really coming up really good, and like whatever you can do in Azure DevOps, you can implement in GitHub Actions as well. Like, I mean, when it comes to Terraform deployments, it's simply like a couple of PowerShell commands like Terraform plan and apply. So it can run on any orchestration platform like pipelines. And when it comes to best practices, what I always say is keep things simple. I mean, even though Terraform or whatever the technology offers you with much complex possibilities, don't jump into that. Think simple and implement simple where you can maintain it easy. That would be the best way.
Sure. So I think there is one more question. It is exactly similar to what application code version follows. If you go for ISV, you have to code. I think.
Lohit was commenting. Thanks for commenting, Lohit. We'll actually commenting.
Yeah.
Right.
Guys, if you have any further questions, or you can ask, or I think next session will be starting in a couple of minutes. Saminathan, you are there?
Just one question.
Yeah.
So in our case, we are using Terraform Enterprise, and there we have a feature of Sentinel policies there, right? If we are not going to use Azure, not going to use Terraform Enterprise, is there any other way with our Terraform open source to scan our scripts for any security best practice?
No, that's an add-on that comes with the enterprise, I believe. You can do the same thing because you can deploy policy and you can deploy the Azure blueprints to do the same thing, but it requires extensive coding from your side to achieve the toolkit. They already do it for you. It's like, CIS is published by someone, but then there are toolkits that are readily available in Azure Security Center. You don't need to go and write it back. You just need to trigger it from your blueprint or Azure policy to make sure that it comes in with your orchestration layer. So the answer is, yeah, it's one of the feature of the enterprise, and it stays with the enterprise unless you want to code it everything manually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our next speaker is also there. Hey, Saminathan, how are you?
Hey, hi Asif, I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, I think good. Hey, I think there is another question. So, you guys, if you have any further questions on Terraform or DevOps, I think Sakthis and Chaminda is there, so you can ask. I think it's an open platform, so you can just have a conversation and can ask anything. Both are expert in this.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Azif, for supporting us, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Chaminda and Sakthis, for joining us for really nice sessions and explanation on doubts. And it was really great to host you. And
Thank you
our
for
next
the opportunity.
speaker is Swaminathan. He is architect at Musk, and he have his great experience on Kubernetes and Docker and DevOps projects. So I think this next session is also going to be very interesting. Um, so let me make him presenter. I think Swaminathan, can you just try to share your screen and see if you. Thank you again, Sakthis and Chaminda, for your wonderful session. And I think now Swaminathan is going to present. So yeah, I think let me introduce Swaminathan. Maybe I think more. He is a Microsoft MVP and solution architect at Musk from India, and he have a lot of experience on different technologies on Azure Stack and Docker, Kubernetes, and .NET technologies and DevOps. So if you are interested, maybe you can. I will just post his blog and his Twitter ID, so you can connect with him if you have any further questions. Yeah, but he's going to talk on today's topic on Supercharge with your Kubernetes experience with VS Code. That's more on it's completely coding and kind of session. So if you have any further questions, you can ask him. You can unmute and can ask him. I think it's like so. Yeah, over to you, Sami. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Thank you so much. So let me quickly share my screen first. I hope I am audible, right?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, great.
So will you cover admin part of AKS as well, Swami?
Not fully. Yeah, I'll just go through the agenda as well, right? It's just I don't have a lot of slides, so you can just take it from there. Yeah.
Sure.
I hope I'm sharing the right one. Are you guys able to see me with the? Yeah. Basically, it's a VS Code. That's why I don't have any slide deck or anything. It's mostly on the VS Code. So this session is also around using different extensions of VS Code and how we can easily work with Kubernetes, right? So I'm not sure if people are from dev background or admin background. What kind of background do we have?
I think
developers.
Both.
We have mixed. Okay, good. So generally, the devs are not very comfortable in keying a lot of things, right? As in commands, basically, right? And especially if you are coming from Microsoft Stack, Visual Studio, or anything else, if you've been using, you are so used to doing a lot of things with the clicks, right? We hardly remember any of the commands, right? So that's where these kind of extensions would help. And let's see how we can use some of the commonly used operations using these extensions, right? So this is the overall agenda, and this is what we are going to look at it. I think about me part, Asif already covered most of it. I work as an architect at Musk. I'm an MVP, and these are different. I'm organizing coordinator some of these meetups in Bangalore, and that's my GitHub and Twitter handle, and that's my blog. And yeah, and that's about me. Other than work, I'm interested in photography and home automation and things like that. All right. So yeah, so what we're going to do today is let's understand what are the different extensions available in Visual Studio Code and how that was going to help us in doing our day-to-day activities with respect to Kubernetes, especially, right? I will briefly touch upon Docker only to generate the Docker files and things like that. But other than that, mostly it will be on the Kubernetes extension is what we would be looking at, right? So these are the below extensions. One is Kubernetes, and then there's also an Azure Kubernetes extension, and then there is something called Bridge to Kubernetes, and then there's something called Deploy to Azure. If you use all of these in combination, you can very well do cluster management to some extent, and then you can also do a debugging of your applications running within Kubernetes from VS Code, and also you can set up the CI/CD pipelines, be it with Azure DevOps or with GitHub Actions directly from the VS Code itself. Right. So that's the quick agenda. And yeah, not much on in-depth on the AKS administration per se, because I'm also mostly from development background, so I have more of Kubernetes, developing with Kubernetes kind of an experience. Yeah, but if there are any questions, I'll take it up. If I don't know, I'll respond back later in the YouTube chat or wherever, right? All right, so first, let's see what are the extensions we want to install, right? So yeah, so if you go to extensions, you can just go ahead and search for Kubernetes, and that will give you a bunch of extensions. So what we are looking at today is the one which is from Microsoft. As you can see, this is a Kubernetes extension, right? You can develop, deploy, and debug the Kubernetes applications from Visual Studio Code, right? And this has a dependency of with this, it will automatically install this extension as well for you. And once you install this, what are the things you can do with this is also clearly called out here, and which is what we are going to see as part of the demo now. All right. And this is one of it. This is the main one, which if you install this extension, as you can see in the left-hand side, there is a Kubernetes bar here, right? The activity bar you can see in Kubernetes icon, that's what you would get. And that would help you to navigate through the different aspects of Kubernetes, which I'll cover in a bit, right? The second one, like I said, is the bridge to Kubernetes. This is an excellent one where let's say if you're working in microservices architecture, right? For example, you would have multiple APIs or multiple microservices deployed into Kubernetes, right? And setting up all of them in the local is going to be a little daunting, right? And also if you want to troubleshoot any of the issues in your dev environment or test environment, this would help you to connect your local machine into the development environment's Kubernetes cluster. And then whatever the calls that's coming to that particular cluster can be forwarded into your local machine, and then you can directly, debug the code from your machine itself. So that would make it a lot easier for us to, debug basically the issues, whatever is happening with our application. Right, that's what this extension is all about, and then we'll also see a demo on that. And then AKS is what would give you some basic cluster-related operations, which also I'll show up in a bit, right? And the last one is the deploy to Kubernetes. Deploy to Azure. This would help in creating the CI/CD pipelines and things like that from the Visual Studio Code itself. Okay. If in case you guys feel I'm moving so fast, please feel free to interrupt. I can definitely slow it down. All right. All right. So now going back to this extension, it's a Kubernetes. Once you install this particular extension, it basically creates these three different views for us. One is the clusters view, where it will list all the clusters present in the whatever is available in the kubeconfig file, right? So before going into that, I'll also show this. Go to settings, right? That's important to understand. And if you go and search for Kubernetes. So yeah, so first thing what you need to set is this VS Docker thing. This is for this particular extension to understand from which Docker repository we need to pull the image when we are trying to deploy the image into the Kubernetes, right? So for that, this is one of the important settings. And then this also has other things like Helm and kubectl path, and everything needs to be defined. By default, it picks up whatever is there in the path, system path variable. If not, you might need to provide it separately here. Right, you can also manage, or you can also look at what's happening in the Minikube as well from this extension itself. That's where we'll have to set up this Minikube path. And then your kubectl path is for your kubectl, and then the Helm is for running your Helm charts and etc. Right. I assume most of you have some amount of basic understanding of Helm and other things. If not, please interrupt whenever I'm touching up that. I can also give a brief around that. Yeah. So once you are done with all these settings, then the extension should be good to get. You should be good to get started with working with that extension. All right. So as you can see here, so this is an AKS cluster which I've spun up for this particular demo, and this is my Docker desktop running in my local machine. I assume my Docker is up and running. Let me quickly confirm that. No, it's not. Quickly turn it on. And this is the Minikube which we can also run from here. You also have different options to create a new AKS cluster from here. For some reason, this was spinning up for a long time for me. Let me check if it's going to work. So you can click next, and then I've already logged in with my Azure credentials. Whatever the Azure account I have, I've logged in here. As you can see at the bottom, it shows Azure with whatever my credentials, right? So it pulls up the subscription from there, and then it will also give you the options to create a new cluster, right? This is one way if at all you are not, if you don't want to go to portal and then create cluster from there. So for the most part, you might not use this because cluster would already be created by somebody else if you are in the development side of activities, right? So let's not wait too much for that. Other options, you can also add the existing cluster, or if in case you are not able to merge the kube config into your local machine here, right? You also have the option to set a specific kube configs. In some areas where, let's say, if the cluster is completely controlled by an RBAC, and then if you're not going to get an complete access to it, right, then you can also the platform team also who maintains that particular cluster can share a kube config file which you can upload here, and then you can use that, and then that cluster would show up here. Otherwise, by default, whatever is there, the kube config file present in your path, that's what would pick up, and then all the clusters listed there would come up here, right? Now, if somebody has worked with AKS before, you would know you need to run quite a few commands, right? Like AZ, AKS, get credentials, and then you'll have to set the cluster name, resource group name, and everything else, right? So you don't need to do all of those things with extensions. So that's where this AKS Azure Kubernetes Service extension would help. So once you have that, it will add this cloud. Under the clouds, you'll have this Azure. So to check all the other cloud providers, you can go to Marketplace, and then as you can see, these are the different Kubernetes instances which you can control from your VS Code, right? Whatever I have installed is this Azure Kubernetes Service. So that kind of gives me this, and then if I go here, I see my AKS cluster. When I right click, I can just say merge into kube config, and done. So and then you would be able to have access to that particular kube config from here, right? And then you can start exploring that particular cluster from here, right? So maybe if you want to, next thing is if you are, let's say if you are part of administration to some extent, right, then you would obviously be managing multiple clusters, right? And then you also need to go and switch the context to multiple things. That's also again much easier here. You can just go right once all of your Kubernetes configurations are put into the kube config, and they're all merged into the kube config, you'll see all of them listed here. And then you can just go and right click and say set as current cluster, and that's about it. And then this would become like your current cluster. And if you want to understand what are the different workloads or what are the different things available within the Kubernetes, you can also do that from here. So you can go and look at all the different namespaces, and whatever you want to set it as default, you can right click and then say use namespace and everything, right? So basically, you don't have to remember a lot of these commands to do your basic operations. You can just go ahead and right click, and then with few clicks you should be able to do it. Right, so these are the namespaces, and then the nodes is where the node pools whatever is available within this particular cluster. So for this demo, I've created a 2-node AKS cluster. That's what you see here, and all the node related things, and what are the different pods running within that particular node, and everything is available here for you. And the workloads is where you would go ahead and look at your deployments. We will see this when we start deploying our microservice into this particular cluster, right? So here is where you will have all the Kubernetes deployments. So Kubernetes deployment is a basic unit of deployment which would help you to deploy your application image into Kubernetes, right? It will create a pod, and then you will have your application running within a pod. So you can go ahead and see how many pods are running, and then what is the deployment name, etc. here. And stateful sets are nothing but if you at all you want to run particular any kind of workload with a persistent storage, right, then you would need to run as a stateful set in Kubernetes. So I can also show that in my local Docker. So I have an WordPress application deployed, which will have the stateful set of MariaDB, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it has a MariaDB, right? So you can also see all these different stateful sets in the configuration. So it's not just only viewing at this level. You can also go click on this and then look at the spec of what is the appropriate, the pod is running. Or if you look at the deployment level thing, it will show you the deployment spec and everything, right? You can also take a look at all of this. So typically you will write a describe command, kubectl describe, and then you would need to describe the entire thing, right? Instead of all of this, you can directly view from here. That makes it a lot easier for us to see what's really in there. Right, and all these are daemon sets if you want to run any daemon set or jobs. Basically, whatever the corresponding workload is there, all those will be available under these different sections. And if you want to look at what kind of services are running, that's where you'll go and look at the network area. You'll have these services. This is not a Kubernetes service. So service is a way by which you would expose a particular application. So deployment, like I said, is a basic unit that will ensure your application is running in a container and in a pod within a pod. And for you to access that particular pod, either within the Kubernetes cluster or outside of Kubernetes cluster, you would need to create these services, right? And those are services which are shown up here. Right. And yeah, the ingress is what you would use to enable an external access to your Kubernetes cluster. So that's like the top one first. All your requests will go to the ingress. Then the ingress will route the calls to your services, and then the service will route the call to your pods, right? How the service will understand what is the pod, that's where it uses an endpoint, right? So this is a .NET Web API, it's not Web API which I've used, right? So this is the endpoint for this particular pod. As you can see, this is a pod name. For this pod, this is an IP address. So whenever somebody is trying to access this .NET Web API service, it will go ahead and route that call to the corresponding pod which is running at this particular IP address. Okay, that's where these endpoints would help. And yeah, and then these are all other things. The storage, if at all you are trying to use a storage, like I said, with the persistent storage, if you are using a MariaDB or anything, you can use a persistent volume or persistent volume claims, and then you can provision these storage capabilities there. And whatever is already available is what would be shown here. Right. Along with this, it also has custom resources. If at all you're working with KDA or any other kind of Kubernetes CRDs, right? Custom resource definitions, all of those would show up here. Right, and you can also manage all of your Helm releases if you're using Helm. So Helm is nothing but a package manager for Kubernetes. Like if you're from the .NET file, maybe you would have used something like Chocolatey, or now we also have WinGet. Right? These are package managers that will help you deploy applications on Windows machines. If you're on Mac, you would have used something called Brew. Right, that's a package manager for deploying applications on Mac machine. Right, on the similar lines, a Helm is something which is like a package manager for deploying your apps into an Kubernetes. Right, for example, for this WordPress as an application, WordPress would need some front end and then a backend API, and then it could need an DB, etc. Right? All of these you can package as a Helm chart, and then you can try and deploy that Helm into the Kubernetes cluster wherever you want to. Right, so that's what, and all those Helm releases also you view from here, and then you can also do a lot of Helm operations like rolling back and then looking at the release status and things like that. And it also has something called Azure Services Operator, so I'll not cover too much on that part now, right? And then I'll move on into the other areas here, right? So that we can quickly get into the development aspects of how this is going to help us. Right, and Helm repos. So if you add any Helm repo into your system, like you can say Helm repository add whatever you give the repository name, then it will get that listed here. So these are the two repos which I have added in my machine. One is KDA core, another is Bitnami. So if you go to Bitnami, you can see a lot of their Helm charts available here. So for example, if you want to run Kafka in your local machine, right, you could pretty much go ahead and say right click on this and then right click on this particular version and then say install, and then it's going to install the Kafka, and it'll also give you instructions on how you can access the Kafka. Right, so as you can see, yeah, so this is what it's trying. It says installed. I'm not sure if this is visible here. It says install Bitnami Kafka as Kafka release, and then it also gives you the the steps to access that particular Kafka instance on your local machine. I mean, that's super fast, right? So we don't have to really go and scramble around how to read a lot of documentation to install it, or etc., etc. Right, that's how you can get more productivity. Yeah, so that's about these Helm related stuffs. And like I said here, moving on to the clouds part, right? So here, like I said, one option is you can enable that particular AKI or merge the Kubernetes configuration of this AKS cluster into a local one. And you can also run a couple of these diagnostics aspects, right? So AKS diagnostics, when you do that, it's going to run the network related diagnostics and then tell you whether your cluster is safe and then what kind of ports are enabled, what kind of vulnerabilities, anything else is there, etc. Right? All these outputs would show up here directly. So this is what I called out, like this has a basic set of cluster handling activities is what you can do from here. If you want to do more in-depth things, yes, definitely need to go into the Azure portal. But the most frequently used ones like running a diagnostics or running a periscope and things like that can be done from the extension here directly. And yeah, so Periscope is nothing but it will tell what are the different deployments and the different pod logs and things like that from the application. And then it would, create that particular logs for us. And then the logs can be stored into the storage account. And then you can also retrieve the logs from storage account, etc. So far, so good. Am I on a good pace?
Yeah, I think there are one question. How to secure kube config?
Okay, how to secure kube config? Yeah, that's a good question. It's actually it is in my view it's already available to a particular user level, right? It's not available at a system level or so, right? And the data what you see is also not in the plain text, right? Whatever you are going to get, let's say the certificates or the information around connecting to the Kubernetes, right? I don't think it's in the plain text. It's already encrypted data, but of course it's not fully encrypted. If you get hold of that particular file, you can obviously try to decode it. But yeah, I've not seen anything else which we need to do separately. And also in the most part, right, all these accesses to kube config or the Kubernetes cluster, you would get only on lower environments, right? Typically, if you have a separate platform team who manages it, they would have access to that. And then the access RBAC would be set up on it for sure. And then you might get access only to the names at the namespace level, right? That's one of the ways to seal the access to within the cluster. But that said, yeah, if around this kube config alone, I'm not too sure, Mohammed. I might need to check on that part. right? But yeah, what I'm trying to explain is, if even though the kube config is available, it's not that you would gain complete access to the cluster and then you can do everything like deleting the deployments or pods or anything like that, right? You would still need to put your RBAC on it with appropriate cluster roles and then cluster role bindings, etc., with which we can limit the kind of access what would happen for individuals, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Sunny. Yeah, I have one question. Is there any extension for the monitoring the the nodes cluster in VS Code?
Sorry, I was reading the chat window. Sorry, what is that?
Is there any monitoring extension like you have shown for the cluster Helm repos or so? Is there any monitoring where we can see that our nodes or cluster is up or running, or
I have not seen anything for monitoring actually. Oops, sorry, wrong button I clicked. There is one for app insights, but that doesn't give so much of details. I have not really explored that yet.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so application app insights is there. So whatever we have on the portal, right, the application Azure application insights related things would show up here. Yeah, but I've not seen specifically for AKS yet, or at least I might explore that.
Yeah, because I was thinking like for Kubernetes dashboard, like how we configure locally. So is there any extension we can do in VS Code if there is anything available on this?
So you can also open the dashboard if it's available. I think that option would still be there. See, if the dashboard is available, you can open the dashboard from here, right? And then you can see what is really happening in that particular thing. Yeah, but that's it. If only dashboard is enabled in that particular cluster, right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think I don't have that. Yeah, that's a problem here. Okay. So that's more around at the high level what these extension brings us, right? Now switching gears into the development aspect of it. Are there any further questions or there are comments?
No, I think Lohit have also replied few for you need to access control of your, I think.
Correct. Yeah. Azure Monitor one, or there are also multiple other things. So let's say if you are using any other license tools like Datadog or any other systems also, then you would need to emit all of your logs into that particular system, and then you will go and view it there. And also Prometheus and a lot of other different tools are there in the cloud native technologies, right? You can set those up on your cluster so that all of your pod health and then your cluster health overall, everything can be monitored using those.
Yeah.
Right. Just one question, so we are using AKS extensively right now, though it's not in production. So even in our pre-production environment, what we are noticing here is with 60 or 70 microservices and the default logging attributes set up on cluster level, we are seeing in a month around 2 or 3 terabyte of data.
Bytes of logs, is it?
Logs.
Okay.
So we have to pay around $4,000 a month just for log. So can you recommend how to decrease the amount of log getting ingested into log analytics workspace? We are seeing it is logging environment variable, like 2 gigs daily. We don't need that. So how to disable that? Is there any way?
So in my setup, I'm not actually using log analytics. We use Datadog. So there we have some of these filters and the taggings available with which you can filter whatever needs to get pushed into the Datadog side. Right? That way we can reduce the data that's getting pushed there. But yeah, I need to check on the log analytics part. Yeah.
By default, it's killing.
Correct. Yeah, I mean it's too much. Yeah, we'll have to definitely look at, because we also have a similar issue here. Yeah, even with Datadog we had the similar things, right? So because it's all at an the index itself can grow more, right? And then even all of your searches and everything would start bloating, and also you would start ending up paying a lot of money to the vendors, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, log handling is something, we'll have to take care at multiple levels. One is, like I said, the filters around what is going out of the thing, and also around what kind of things we want to scrap and what kind of logs the actual pods emit and what kind of logs we want to scrap out of the system metrics, etc. Right? A whole lot of things we'll have to factor in so that it's in control.
Are you also using service mesh like STO?
Not yet. We are experimenting on that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, so that's around all of these high-level stuff on this, right? Now, getting into the development part of it, how this helps in the development pieces, right? This is a basic .NET web API application, right? Let me quickly, just run this to show how we are going to, put this into Kubernetes using these extensions, right? Yeah, that's a good point. With logging architecture, nobody worries until you go into production and the build is high. So I just created this endpoint just to print the, from which machine it is running, right? So this is the PC name. So it just shows hello / whatever it's coming from there, right? So what we are going to do now is we would deploy this particular small basic microservice into Kubernetes using these extensions, and then see how we can debug it, and then how we can do all of the other stuffs. Yeah. Okay, maybe I should. Oops. Okay, I'll keep it this way. Okay, fine. So first thing some more things I also missed to mention is around these options, right? So if you go and open the command palette by pressing this Control-Shift-P, and then if you go and look at this Kubernetes, you can see all the different commands, what it is there. If you are so used to commands and not used to right click and then doing things, you can also open this command palette and then do things like this, right? These are the different set of activities which can be done, and each one is scoped to do different areas, right? Some of these like use namespace and all are generic. Some of these commands would work only on the active Kubernetes manifest files, etc. Right. So before we get there, first let's use this Docker extension and then add a Docker files to the workspace, right? So this is a basic .NET app, as you can see here, which is having just an controller which just says this hello with whatever the API endpoint which I've exposed, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to run this inside the Docker container, like I said. So I'm just going to add Docker workspace. And this list what are the different languages. These are different languages that this extension supports. And currently we're using ASP.NET Core, so I'll go ahead with that. I'll use Linux, and the port I'll make it default port 80. And Docker Compose I don't need because this is just a standalone my API, so I'm not going to need Docker Compose. If you need it, you can also add that. And once you do that, it creates this Docker file, which is a multi-stage Docker file, right? So this is a stage where you are trying to, this is basically an ASP.NET is a runtime, and this SDK is the .NET SDK base image. So from this image, we are trying to build the .NET application. Right? That's why you can see this as, these are the build parts. Right, so here you're using this base image, and then this is my project name. I'm doing a .NET restore, and I'm doing a .NET build, and then building it with a release configuration, right? And whatever we have built, again, we are trying to publish that particular thing from that particular image after the build is complete, and then this here is where we are going to run that particular application. Basically, we are telling .NET ASC Singapore is the entry point, and whenever this container comes up, the particular application would run. It's typically similar to .NET, and whatever I did from the local machine, it's going to do the same thing, right? So first thing is, creating Docker file is easy. You don't have to hand create yourselves, and you'll also get all these suggestion options and then help and the documentation, etc. Right? What is a web layer, and then it also gives you intelligence options for you. So creating Docker file is kind of a breeze, I can say, with these extensions, right? So one part is creating these, and also you can also look at all the other Docker containers and the images and registries and everything. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. So these are different things which we can explore with the extension here, right? All these are the different Docker containers which are running. You typically need to do Docker PS to go and look at all the running ones, and then you do a Docker PS-A to run to view all the remaining ones, etc. Right? So all those are available at one shot for us. This is just a touch upon the Docker extension. So what we're going to do now is next we'll go ahead and build the Docker image. You can also do that. So Docker and then say build image, but it will build with the same name as the folder name. But I think for now it's okay. Or if you want to customize it, you can give a different name or so. Let it build. Anything else? Okay, I don't see any other questions here. Yeah, so let it build. Any other questions? Meanwhile, if I can take something as that happens.
Hey guys, if you have any further questions or doubt, you can unmute and can ask, or you can put in the chat box.
So, Swami, any experience of you on Kubernetes nodes restarts, because Microsoft is putting security patches then you need to automate, and restarting of nodes is customer's responsibility, not Microsoft's. So have you faced that, how you are managing your cluster with such scenario?
Yeah, not really, because like I said, I also have a separate platform team who manages those Kubernetes admin part of it, right? So setting up this RBAC and then setting up this, or at least maintaining the patching and things like that. So yeah, I don't have much information on that particular aspect.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe our next session, which is on 4th October. So these kind of questions might be very helpful. You can ask from Microsoft guy. He's Fazil. I think he's admin certified also Kubernetes. So yeah, I think more in depth also for Kubernetes administration, you can ask the questions.
Sure, that will be great.
That's good. Yeah, okay, just quickly to check if the image is already created. Let me go here. I believe it should be something with the Azure Singapore live demo, right? Yeah. So I don't think I will run this image in the Docker container. I think that's pretty evident that, right, if we just go ahead and do it, it's going to work there. So what we will now do is start deploying this into the Kubernetes, right? So before doing that, we need to also push this image into a remote registry. Only then Kubernetes can pull it from there, and then we can perform a deployment, right? So I'm going to use this again, Docker image push here. And then this is the image which I want to push it. And the tag also I'll use it as latest. Of course, you wouldn't be using latest in your regular workflows. You would use either a git hash or your build number or whatever. Right? Since it's a demo, I'm using a latest. So that's my repo name. So I'll just say one big / Azure Singapore live demo latest, right? And then I'll say enter. And now what I'm doing is I'm just tagging this particular image and then pushing it into my Docker registry so that I'll be able to pull it from there. Okay, still doing. Okay, let it do. Meanwhile, I'll also try to, and create some more folder structure here. Maybe I'll just create a folder called KH where we'll create these manifests. Right. So to deploy anything into Kubernetes, as you know, I think two things are important, right? One is the deployment YAML, and the other is the services YAML. Right, those are the two bare minimum things you would need. Of course, you would need other secrets, config map, and other thing dependent on what other workloads you are deploying. Right. Okay, it's still slow. Yeah, so let it happen. Meanwhile, I'll try to create these, deployment YAML files. Right? So here, when you go to YAML file, it should actually show you the. Yeah, so type deployment, and then you can get that IntelliSense, and then you can, not the IntelliSense, like a code snippet also, you will have it, and that would help you create this entire deployment YAML file. All the bare minimum things needed in your deployment YAML is already out there available for us. So the app name, I'll make it as Azure Singapore live demo, right? And then the image name would be the same as now thing I gave it as Azure Singapore. Right, and the container port thing, we are running it on 80 port, right? Default port. So I'll just mention that, and then I'll save this. Meanwhile, did the other one run through? Okay, it's about to complete. Right. So yeah, here also you will get all the other options. Let's say if you want to add any other things, really, any other container or anything else. For example, if you want to put name, right, you can also see all of those the details about what individual tags means, and then it also does your linting, and then it also gives you upfront YAML validation errors and things like that. This is pretty handy for us to work on these Kubernetes manifests here. Okay, still pushing. Okay, meanwhile, let us go ahead and create the service. So again, for service also, you have these snippets. I think as of now, we have deployment, service, secrets, and config maps, if I'm not wrong. All other things we might need to still, go ahead and create it manually. We don't have snippets for all the things yet. Vector also would be the same thing. And I want to run this in the 8081, and the target port would be 80, right? So here is where we're getting a basic service. By default, this service would be created as a cluster IP. That means this particular Kubernetes service what I have is going to be accessed only by any other Kubernetes service which is present within the same cluster. Right? I'm not enabling any external access, just to showcase how the port forwarding and other things are much easier here. All right. So yeah, so we're also ready with this particular service YAML, and once this is pushed, we are good to deploy this into Kubernetes. Okay, I think it's there. So yeah, so again here, once the deployment is there, you can go here and then say Kubernetes. And then you can either create or apply, both you can do. If you're creating for the first time, it is going to create it. I'm going to apply it automatically. It will ask anyways, telling resource deployment does not exist. This will get a new resource. So I'll go ahead and say create. And now this would get the deployment created, right? As that happens, it'll also run this particular thing. Yeah, Kubernetes supply is already there. This also doesn't exist. I'll go ahead and create this service. Right. So now whether these are properly deployed or not, again, we can go ahead and explore here to see what's really happening. This is my workload, my deployment. Azure Singapore live demo is already available. I see that it's already up and running. Right. And if I go to this network, I also see that .NET Web API is also up and running here, right? So that's how fast we can basically take something as a very basic microservice, anything into your Kubernetes, right? So of course, if you're having your live application, you would have dynamically you would be injecting the environment variables dynamically. All those things will go under your containers environment variables part here. For brevity sake, I've excluded all of those things. So basically, you would use environment variables to inject the environment specific things. For example, the same image, if you want to deploy it into another environment like PP environment, right? You don't want to rebuild your image, right? You would pass your PP dependencies or whatever secrets and everything in a different environment variable. So all those processes would continue. But yeah, the scope of discussion here is more around how we can use this extension more. So I kind of left those aspects aside. Okay, so now the service is also running. So now how do we access this service? So what it has created, right? That also we can see from here. So it's a pod. If you click on the service, right? So you can see that this is the API of version which V1 of kind service which we created, and this is the spec, and this is the type of this particular thing is cluster IP, right? And this is the cluster IP address, right? That means this IP address is local to this Kubernetes cluster, right? It's accessible only within any other service which is sitting within the cluster. So now for us to access this, what we need to do is we can do something called port forwarding. There are multiple options. There are different types of service you can create. If you create cluster IP, like I said, it's internal. If you create something called a node port, that's available in the node port. And if you have something a load balancer, that will create an external IP for us. Right? So all those details are also available in the documentation here. All right, so you can choose whichever the type of service you want to create depending on the need. Right, so here, yeah, since I have made it cluster IP, so I can just go ahead and right click and then say port forward here. So it's an easier option to do your port forwarding. And then this will ask what is the local port and the remote port. So maybe the local also I'll map it to 8081 just for simplicity and easy understanding. And then the service is also running in, okay, what did I create here? Did I make it run in 8080? Yeah, I think the port is 8080 here. So I'll say go to port forward and then say 8081 to 8080, right? And then I'll enter. And this will now start the port forwarding session. And then whenever I hit now localhost 8081, it should start, hitting the actual service. Right? How do we know if it's really hitting the actual service? You can also look at the logs of this particular thing. So if you go and right click, you can also see these logs here, right? So this is to retrieve your pod logs. And I'll just go and say follow logs and then start it so that it will start showing the logs here. And now when I start hitting this particular endpoint, you should see the logs already appearing here. Right, let me this side. I hope this would work. T1, sorry. Oops, it's HTTPS. Okay, I have made HTTPS enabled. Yeah, so as you can see now, right? So here it's coming from .NET Web API. Okay. Okay. I put forward the wrong one. Yeah, I didn't run our Azure Singapore thing. I just put forward the .NET Web API existing service. That's where you see as coming as hello from .NET Web API, and then the pod name. But yeah, this doesn't have any logs here. Maybe let me quickly redo this. Okay, I'll go here. Not API. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I should have done this. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is on port 8081, correct. So let me go ahead and port forward this one and then quickly show the log tailing as well, which would help us in finding out issues or whatever we have. Okay, I hope now this should work. Yeah, so now as you can see, it's coming hello from whatever this pod here, right? Whatever the pod that's running, that's what is giving this message. I also have these logs showing up just for example, let's say message equal to that. You can see that the 0 args from this one, right? So basically, this is how you can, in your development inner loop, right? You can quickly run your application running within Kubernetes and then go and quickly follow the logs and everything, all within a single place, which is our VS Code here, right? Okay, what else we have? Yeah, there are also other options which you can see, as you can see from here. We just saw how we can do a port forwarding, and then we also saw how we can tail the logs, which are two most important or most frequently used things whenever you are trying to troubleshoot any issues with your microservice running within Kubernetes. There are also other aspects which you can do. You can also directly log into the terminal here, right? And then you can run through any commands. For example, if at all you want to check what's really available in that particular container. So this is like now I've logged into the container itselse. You would typically use kubectl exec or different other commands to get in there. So basically you can avoid those typings and then you can get there faster and then start doing the actual things, right? So yeah, this is the container, the folder, whatever I am currently in, and that's what I'm trying to list here, right? So since it's more of a basic application, you might not feel the need of or the power of this. But if you're working on any kind of specific issues or so, the faster you get access to all of these things within Kubernetes, you will have a better time to look into solving your actual issues or the business stuff, right? Okay, I should have done quit. Okay, so that's around running into the terminal and then port forwarding visa. And next, we'll also go into the debug part. Yeah, so one thing you might have also seen, there's something called watch, right? What that does is it automatically reload this entire view. If you had noticed initially when I opened the services, this Azure Singapore live demo was not there, and I had to go and manually click on this refresh button to refresh the things, right? If you do a watch, it'll automatically watch for any changes that's happening into any of these workloads. And then it'll automatically refresh the entire view here. That's what watch does for us. Yeah. So far so good. Let me go back to my agenda and see what all we did covered so far. So yeah, so we did get started with these things, and then we did have an extensions walkthrough, settings visa, the menu visa, the command palette visa, and yeah, cluster management operations. Also creating cluster we couldn't do. Adding also didn't work out for some reason. Switching we tried, diagnostics visa, periscope visa, and we also did port forwarding, yeah, and log streaming, and this part, yeah, scaling up or down, right? So for example, now let's say if you want to scale up your container or down to see how it's really working out or so, right, you can very well do that as well. So on right click on this particular deployment, sorry, not on the pod, right click on the deployment and then say scale, and then you can select, say if you want to give 4, right, I'll just say 4, and basically this will start scaling your pods into 4, right? So obviously you would have some sort of an autoscaler enabled in your actual prod kind of an application, either a horizontal pod autoscaler, or if you're using an event-driven architecture, you would use something like KDAO to do an autoscaling. But if you want to understand what, let's say if you want to do a perf kind of thing on your local machine to see what number of pods we should do an autoscaling, etc., right? If you are working on such kind of things, you can very well use this, and then you can do this manual scaling to see how things work there. Okay, so is there any option to test application scaling? To test it again, we can do it from by doing a port forwarding of the service itself, right? It should start routing it to different endpoints. Let me see if that kind of works now. I will see 888.1:8081. Then I'll do this. Is all of them up and running? Okay, yeah, so all the pods are up and running. I'm expecting when I hit this endpoint, now it should start, returning different things. One of the ports. Yeah, but yeah, we can definitely do that testing. I mean, if you look at the dashboard also, you will also see with the load getting increased, right? You can also see the memory pressure on that particular pod, and then how the other pods are being used, etc. Right, but within here, I don't see any direct means to look at from which pod the request is coming or how the scaling is working. If that's the question.
Thanks, Sony. Actually, I was actually looking for any option for cluster scaling, or you already explained for the horizontal pod scaling. So yeah, thanks. I think I got it.
Okay. Cool. Maybe we should try hitting more or so. I'm just having only one instance, right? So obviously it didn't really route the traffic to a different pods, right? So yeah, so scaling up, scaling down, again, all those things are also feasible. Once you do a scale up, you can also very well bring it down to 1, and then you can just bring it back to whatever the number of pods you want, right? Yeah. So if you have to run commands, maybe I don't even remember the commands now, kubectl, scale, whatever, up or down or whatever, and then you have to give the count and then it will do it, right? Instead of all of these, you can, do it from here. I mean, why type when you can click, right? That's the kind of thing.
Yeah, as a Windows lover, I think you will always prefer VS Code.
Yeah, I mean, even on Mac also currently use mostly one VS Code only. So be it for Java applications or Terraform or anything else, right? This is actually very good. You have a lot of these built-in extensions, right? And that kinds of help us. Basically, your productivity depends on the kind of tools what you use, right? If you are using the same tool on day in and day out, you will be more productive. If you're switching between multiple IDEs or multiple editors, etc., you would not feel very much productive. That's where I kind of use VS Code a lot.
Thanks.
Let me go back to agenda to see. I'm just sticking to that. Okay, I think we also saw this deploying a .NET application into Kubernetes. Now let's get into the debugging aspects, right? The debugging needs some amount of settings to be updated, right? So let me quickly putting sessions running. Okay, so if in case you minimize the terminal or anything else, you can also go and open this to see if there are any port forwarding sessions available. You can go ahead and terminate that from here. Right, you can go to show port forwarding sessions, and then that will show that to you, right? Okay, so now if you go to this bridge to Kubernetes, right, that's another extension which is going to help us in doing the debugging aspects for us, right? So if you go to bridge to Kubernetes and say configure, right, it will ask which service it would want you to connect to, right? So let's say, for example, I'll say Azure Singapore live demo, right? And then enter your local port such as 80 or 0 from where it should be routed to. I'll mark it as 8081 here. And then what is the configuration we want to use? Do we want to do and launch, let's say .NET Core launches, you can launch the particular application from VS Code, and then that will enable the debugger to the actual running service which is running within Kubernetes, right? Let me go ahead and use that. And then this is another nice features, right? You have 2 levels of isolation here. When you say, as you can see here, yes and no, right? If you say no, that means all the requests, whatever is going to the cluster, right? Not from your machine. If anyone else is also, so imagine you are now trying to debug your application running in a live cluster, and the live cluster could get traffic. When I say debugging, it's going to happen only in dev environment. Don't think that's going to work in prod or anything. It's meant for only dev and test environments, right? You are having your dev environments where multiple developers can start hitting your microservices, right? And do you want to route all of those requests into, you want to enable the debug session for all of them, or if you want to do only for your own specific thing? Let's say you are building a new functionality, enhancing the functionality in your current microservice, right? If at all you are trying to debug that particular thing alone, you can go ahead and use yes, so that it's going to create a subdomain. As you can see, SVA is my machine name or the username, and then it is trying to create that particular request alone. It will forward that request alone to my machine. Or if you're troubleshooting a generic dev issue, and if you want to debug it and then work on it, then you can go ahead and redirect all the incoming requests to the cluster to your local machine. For this one, I'll just say yes, so that only my request would get routed here, right? And then it would go ahead and create that launch configuration. And to see the launch configuration, you can go to debug, and then you can as you can see, there's something called .NET Core Launch Web with Kubernetes, right? That's the name of the configuration. If you go and look at that, this is what is the configuration that got added now, right? So it's going to run few things under the hood for us, bridge to Kubernetes compound tasks, and then these are the environment variables it is passing, and it's also setting the source file map so that the debugger can use that to debug it, right, or to put the breakpoints. Now to run this, let's go ahead and run this particular launch this particular application, and let me go ahead and put a breakpoint in some of my controllers, maybe this hello controller itself. Okay, it is running, and yeah, let me go ahead and start doing the port forwarding for my service. So port forward to 8081 is what we have given, right? So it's 8081. Yeah, okay. So now let's go ahead and check. This should work now. 8081/hello. If I hit that, what happened? Did it hit it or no? It should have hit. It is showing in here. Ah, okay. I hit HTTPS again. My bad. Okay, no, it's not working. I have done the port forwarding setup. It is running from here. This is wrong. Okay, let's do it the other way. We can also, yeah, someone has a question. Okay, so you can also directly go to the pods, and then you can debug, launch local tunnel. Also, you can do both. That's the same thing. But typically, if you use that bridge to Kubernetes, if you come from there, that would be better. That's what I tried to do. As you can see, these are the steps what it is running, right? It's understanding the current cluster, and then it's trying to isolate the service with routing header as this one. Yeah, okay, this didn't show up. Yeah, it needs a bit of an admin permission to ensure to register this host as a trusted host into the Kubernetes cluster, so that it can forward the request to the application, right? So that's one thing is needed. Now it should work. Yeah, redirecting traffic from the cluster to your machine. Yeah, I have an admin user account control prompt here, which I just said yes. Yeah. So this is still trying to do this, redirecting Kubernetes service, this is a demo to your machine, and preparing to run bridge. Yeah, and then it says connection established. Hopefully it should work now. Let's give it a try again. Okay. I think it's doing something or no. What happened? Container port 80 is available at localhost colon 8081. That's what it says. Okay. Okay, it's still doing something. Let's see. I mean, that's what happens in a live demo, right? Yeah, I was able to do this with the other one .NET Web API, whatever we had, right? I was just trying to get through that. Yeah, ideally, yes. The idea is, yeah, it establishes the entire connectivity to this, and also it is a little bit what to say, a little tricky. That's why I also put this link here. So if we have any issues, we can refer this documentation, and then we can course correct some of these steps, whatever we are doing, or so. That's what I kept doing as well. Yeah, the point is, yeah, it does work, but yeah, maybe I'm kind of missing some aspects here.
Yeah, there is one question from Aslam. I think how it will behave with private AKS.
So the connection to your AKS and everything is happening with the kubeconfig, whatever we have here, right? So I've set up the connection to this here, right? So when you say private AKS, are you referring to the one with a subnet and everything, whatever you have created within your own network, which is not publicly accessible? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, private AKS part, I need to check. So there are also a couple of callouts here as well. But I need to check in the prerequisites if private AKS is supported or not.
Right.
I've not tried it myself.
Plus, if my pod has a sidecar as well, so then
that wouldn't work.
Then it will not work.
It wouldn't work. Yeah, that's already mentioned here. You can only redirect services that have a single pod, but yeah.
Single pod or single
pod
container?
it is, yeah. Yeah, it's a single pod, not a container. Actually, it could work. I've not tried with my prod thing yet.
What do you mean by single pod? There will be multiple pods in an namespace.
So the service, whatever the service we are trying to connect to, right? Let's say for this service, I think when I had a scaled version of more or 4 replicas or whatever, if I have it, right? In those cases, it wouldn't work. Because it's more for us to do like a development kind of an work, right? So it doesn't really work with the scaled version of your pods.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
So these are the steps which are specified here, and that's exactly what I tried as well. I'm not sure, maybe I would have messed up some of the thing. So one pod is equal to 1 container, sidecar pod equal to 2 containers. Yes, if there's a sidecar inside the pod, yes, it's becoming 2 containers. But what the prerequisite says is 1 pod. My understanding is it wouldn't work with if you have multiple replicas available, right? Because obviously it doesn't know to which one to port forward from, right? If there's 1 pod, it will establish that particular connectivity between that pod to the debugger, whatever we are having in our machine. Yeah. Yeah, so this is actually one good thing. I'm not sure why this doesn't work. Okay, let me stop that and then maybe give it one more try. One last time.
You are using .NET, right? So what about Node.js or React?
It does support. So if you can see here, right? So it does support multiple other Node.js, Python, .NET, and Java, if I'm not wrong. Connecting. So this is one way of debugging using bridge to Kubernetes. Without that, also you can also do debugging directly from Kubernetes as well, right? That's another thing which I also did. I put that link here. Yeah. So this is another way. If let's say if you don't want to connect to the actual live cluster, and then if you don't want to do that, but if you want to, let's say you are running in your local machine, and then if you want to see how this works in the Kubernetes, right? If you want to do such debugging, you can also do these a standalone debug on Kubernetes option, which is also available as part of this extension, right? In that you can use all of these .NET, Go, Java, Python, and Node. These are the languages which are supported, and this has a detailed descriptions or the steps on how we can set up this entire stuff. Yeah.
Can you paste your URL here in the chat?
Sure.
The one that you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. So this is one, and then the bridge to. So like I said, this bridge to Kubernetes is a little more advanced debugging thing, just to connect ourselves to the live environment and then test it. If it's the first level of debugging, if you want to do, we can use a regular debugger. So that's why you see 2 options here, right? If you recollect when I right click on this particular pod, you can see 2 things, right? Whether debug attach or debug local tunnel. This local tunneling is what would come up with the help of bridge to Kubernetes. Otherwise, you will just have a debug with the attached one, and then that will it's like running within a container using the Docker extension, right? It's the same thing. You run a container, put a breakpoint inside your application, and then whenever you access that particular app in the container, the breakpoint would hit here. VS debugger needs to be installed there. So yeah, now going back to that particular thing, the setup is little different that needs to do for individual Java debugging. So we need to add these corresponding source map and other things in a clear way. So for example, if I go back to what I mean by this is .NET debugging, right? So we need to install the VSDBG in the container, actual container where it is. That means we'll have to run, open the terminal in that container and then go ahead and run this. After that, when we try to attach that container only, it will be able to run the debugger, right? If you don't want to do that, and if you want to use bridge to Kubernetes, we need to follow the other sequence of steps, whatever is available here. Right? Those are the 2 different means to do the debugging. Yeah, let me give one last try to see if that works. Debug local channel. Any other questions meanwhile? Yeah, okay, private AKS something. Yeah, I also need to check that. Let me check if there is anything. I don't see there's mention of anything else.
So do you follow any particular strategy for namespaces?
It depends on the products basically. See, if a particular namespace, if a particular cluster is shared by multiple product teams within a specific group or so, right? Then we follow like the product name and then the corresponding environments, right? So we kind of have one non-prod cluster and then a prod cluster, and the non-prod would have multiple namespaces specific, like the namespace isolation is at the environment isolation is at like the namespace level only. So like dev, whatever the product name dash dev, product name dash QA, product name dash PP, and things like that. And if what all we are trying to do any kind of POCs, we have a separate namespace for it and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's check one last time to see if port forwarding is available. It says localhost 8081. Localhost it or no? Okay, no, I think something is messed up in my settings. It's not able to pick it up. Yeah. But anyways, you get the idea, right? Like how we can use that. That's what I wanted to show here. Yeah. Not able to port forward it. Here it says localhost 8081 is available, but still it's not able to route the calls. It's a problem. Okay, anyways, no worries. So that's one part on the debugging, and what else I had to show this to some extent. Setting up CI/CD, yeah, that's another interesting thing, right? Maybe we can. It wouldn't take too much time. Let's quickly do that as well. So for this to work, the particular repository should be available in GitHub, right? I don't think Azure DevOps is available now, or I'm not too sure on that. Mine is available in GitHub, and if you have that, you can go down to Kubernetes and then go to Clouds. Right click on this and then just say configure CI/CD workflow. What it would need is an GitHub path that would have an access to create or update GitHub workflows, right? I will quickly, get that as well. So you can go to GitHub settings and then create your personal access token. And when you create the personal access token, you need to ensure you give the workflow access to that, so that the moment you commit this particular workflow, the GitHub workflow can get triggered, right? So I'll just give this path, and then this will do all the magic for us. It will look at all. Oops, where did it go? Look at all the different things. Azure service operator failed. It's okay. Okay, so do you want to use a new container registry or existing container registry? I have created one container registry called CSC or Azure Singapore meetup. So I'll create that. If you don't have it also, you can also create it on the fly as part of this itself. And then the Docker file path, it's on my current folder only. So I'll just leave it as is. Dot the container port 8081. Okay, container port is 80. So basically this generates all the necessary manifest files and also all the workflow files and everything, right? As you can see here, this is the deployment file which it created, right? This is the name. If you want, you can go ahead and change the name here, right? It has all these metadata name, and this is the container name, and this is the image from where it is going to push it, right? And I don't think I would, yeah, the pushing would also happen via the workflow. And so this is the image name, and this is the image, yeah, the tag. Sorry, the image name, the registry name and the image name. And then these are the ports, container port is 80, that's where our application is running, right? And then you also have the service thing. Here it's getting a load balancer because obviously we are deploying into a public AKS instance, so load balancer is created. If you want to change it, you can also change that, right? And this port is 80 is what it is telling. Maybe I'll just use this port as 8081, or I think it's okay, it's a load balancer, so it's fine. Yeah, and then, yeah, the protocols and all of the stuffs. And this is your entire YAML file, or when I say YAML file, this is the workflow YAML file, which you can, which is going to do the GitHub Actions part, right? So this is the job. There's only one job, which is called build and deploy, right? And this is going to run on your Ubuntu latest VM. That's the runner, action runner, which is going to execute this entire action. And these are the steps what you would typically do, right? You are checking out the application, and then we are doing a Docker login. So it also creates these secrets. So these secrets would be created in the repository. I'll also show that in the GitHub once this is committed, right? And what we're also doing is we are trying to build the image and then push the image here, right? So this has the basic steps of directly building the Docker image. If you want to include your other steps like running your unit tests, running all other stuffs also, yes, we can go ahead and modify this YAML file, right? But at least the ones which are needed to build the image and then setting the Kubernetes context, and creating the namespace for this deployment and creating the secrets to pull the image and doing the actual deployment into the AKS. All of these things are already available readily for us, right? I'm just going to say confirm. These are two options here: confirm, commit and push, and discard and discard the pipeline. I'm going to commit and push this. So once this is pushed, you should see the GitHub actions getting triggered automatically for us, right? That's how easy it is to create an GitHub action. And I guess this works only with GitHub actions, if I'm not wrong. So if I go to, I remember seeing a settings for that. Okay, yeah, so the workflow files are pushed to GitHub. We'll go and check that. Before that, I wanted to show one setting. Deploy to Azure. Yeah, so this one, set up CI/CD in Azure pipelines for GitHub repositories, right? By default, it uses actions. You can also do that, but please note this is ignored while configuring CI/CD workflows in AKS extension for VS Code. So this is a standalone extension with which you can also set up Azure pipelines to Azure pipelines based pipeline YAMLs, right? In that case, it will, if you enable this, it will create it. Otherwise, by default, it uses actions, and for the AKS thing, it always uses GitHub actions only. Okay. Now let's go ahead and browse the workflow. So when I go here, okay, something has failed. What is that which is failed? Okay, I don't have the secrets, I believe. Expected error, Docker reading a Docker file is a directory. Okay, did I mess up the Docker location workspace? And then it says dot. Okay, yeah, let's fix that. Go to security, not security, I think settings. What's happening? Come on. Settings and is that in secrets? Yeah. So these are the secrets what it would automatically create for us to, the username, password, and then the kube config and everything. And this is what is also referenced inside the workflow is what we just saw here, right? Whatever the workflow we have, it uses these specific secrets and not the secrets, these secrets, sorry, ACR underscore, blah, 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 whatever we have, that's what would be created here. And that's what would be referenced there. Now let's go back and look at the Docker step here. Docker build GitHub workspace / dot. Is it not in the here? Okay. Yeah. It is there here. Okay, let's look at that. So let me quickly first pull it from the master, and then we can explore the YAML file. So basically, I created this GitHub workflow file, which is what is a file which we just saw quite some time back, and then these manifests. Right. If we already have the Kubernetes manifest and everything, we can actually use that itself. Right. If you go to the workflow, what it is doing is here is where it is using those manifest files. Right. It says this particular folder. If we have already created this YAML file separately, you can go ahead and modify the values here so that the workflow would get triggered with this particular with this manifest files. Right. And yeah, this does this. Let me go look at this one. Docker build, this one dasher. Okay. Oh, so it was taking file name. Okay, I missed that part. I thought it's a workspace name, and then I just gave that dot. I should have given a Docker file there. Can fix this Docker file. Yes, and then I'll try and push this. So obviously you would need to use an PR-based approaches to push it into the Docker file. Is it not there? Oh yeah, I think I didn't commit the Docker file itself. Yeah, right. I added after this, but I forgot to commit that. Okay, that's good. This one and then Docker ignore also I will commit. Docker file stage changes. We don't need them, it's okay. Stage changes and then push them. Let's see if this works. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, maybe I would have made minor mistakes here and there. Pushed and our actions should get triggered again. Add a Docker file. Yeah, it will go ahead and get that triggered. Okay, any question? Because on the show is naming notion, yeah, you can take a similar post name, usually respond to the boundary up front. Yeah, right. Yeah, I think now it's fine. It's able to pull the image and then it will go ahead and deploy this. And once this is done, you should be able to see the application running in the AKS cluster, right? In the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and switch the namespace. Let us current cluster. And yeah, you should see, this is the existing one which I created before, AKS is a meetup demo. And I think we should see a new one now. Let me do a watch here. As that runs. When to go for Cage? Good question, Lohit. Yeah. I mean, it depends, right? Not all the microservices need to be deployed into Kubernetes, right? There are also other options on Azure. If you're working on Azure, right? You can start with VM scale sets, or you can also use Azure PaaS services, etc. But if you are looking at more, if you want to leverage the benefit out of all the Kubernetes goodness, like the orchestration and the dynamic scaling and things like that, right? Then Kubernetes would be a good option. But that said, Kubernetes also comes with a big baggage by itself, right? Someone needs to administer or manage the entire Kubernetes cluster, manage the node pools, ensure all your patches are updated on those node pools, etc. If you're using AKS, some portion of it is taken care of by Microsoft, but still all your node pool handling and things like that needs to be taken care of by you. But yes, it does come with an additional things. But yeah, you always need to look at the options, right? What is that we are trying to achieve out of this? If it's a simple API or microservice, if you want to get it up and running, I wouldn't recommend going into Kubernetes route, right? You can very well use Azure App Service or any other PaaS offerings and then get it up and running there, right? If you're having quite a few microservices, and then if you're looking at a lot of these inter microservice communications, etc., right? For example, if you're building an application which is going to have 5 microservices, right? If you deploy all 5 into 5 different app services, it's going to be little, the network hop would be there, right? If you're going to deploy all of those 5, I mean, 5 is still an agreeable number or a smaller number. If you deploy all of them into a cluster, into a common Kubernetes cluster, the communication between them can happen internal to the cluster itself. None of your calls will go outside of your cluster or so. You have to factor in a lot of aspects before getting into Kubernetes. But yeah, I just try to call out a few things here. If there anything specific, I can also touch upon those. Okay, looks like the build and deployment is complete. Let's go ahead and check here. If did it create? I don't know what was the namespace it was trying to create. Okay, Singapore meetup demo. Let me start in the nodes. Workloads, deployments. Oh, damn. Why it's not showing that? That's interesting. None of my things are working. Today, deployed AKS cluster, and where did it deploy? Should also give the IP address. Service is one deployed, loaded, annotator. Okay, you done good. All these are great. Okay, yes, is this one. Okay. Namespace is AKS Singapore meetup demo. Oh, okay, that is what is. Okay, that's available here. Sorry, I think I didn't see it properly. Yeah, so now in this namespace, yeah, you can see the deployment is already available. AKS Singapore meetup demo, and that had two replicas. I believe that's what is given there, and then the service also should be available. Yeah, so this is the meetup service, and then if you look at the service here, click on that, you can see this is the there's a load balancer IP. Yeah, so this is my load balancer ingress IP, right? So now if I go ahead and hit that, the understanding is it should work. /hello. Yeah, I think yeah, it is working, right? So hello from blah blah blah. So that's how we were able to deploy, test and debug in a local machine. Of course, not completely, and then we were able to deploy it into AKS cluster, and then we were able to get it working from there as well. All right. That's like the end-to-end thing which you can do with just VS Code alone. I think I'm already running out of time. So Helm charts, I don't really cover much now. So basically, you have a lot of Helm related stuffs available. With whatever the available manifest file, you can also convert them into Helm, or you can also create new Helm charts, and a lot of other things are also possible with this extension too. Maybe that's for later time.
Yeah, we can have another session for on Kubernetes and Helm charts. And yeah, I think it's really nice session. Like a lot of stuff. I used to use the most of the commands, but now I think I'm going to try with VS Code.
Yeah.
Extensions.
Yeah.
Okay,
Commands are good, but you need to remember them. Or if you forget it, you'll have to go open Google or somewhere and then go and find it out and then come back and put it there, right? So instead, if things are there.
Yeah. For like for the Windows guy who are more on like user interface, I think this will be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys, if you have any further questions, you can unmute and can ask. I think we are almost going to end. So I think thanks Lohit for answering a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I think it's
thanks Lohit. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And yeah, inter-app service communication, yes, of course, VNet is there, doesn't go out of the Azure backbone, but if you're using within Kubernetes, it doesn't even come out of your VNet itself, right? Let's say if it's all deployed in the same node, it's not even going out of that particular node itself. So it would be even better, right? Yeah.
Any last comment or something, some best practice, or you would like to recommend to audience for starting Kubernetes or something?
Yeah, Kubernetes is vast. Yeah, we'll have to start slow, right? Understand the basic constructs like how a deployment would work. See, main thing, at least more from the developer-focused things, right? You need to know how you can troubleshoot any issues, right? Because doing deployment in demo and everything would work fine. But once you start deploying via either your GitHub Actions or any other CI/CD mechanisms, what you have, you need to know how these environment variables are set up, and you need to know how you can go and troubleshoot some of these issues, right? So especially you can use these Kubernetes to describe all of your deployments or replica sets or things like that to understand what really got in there, right? So those are the things which I would recommend. That's where I see a lot of developers are also kind of getting stuck, right? Yeah, once if you're not able to see what's really happening within there, you can't really understand, you can't really find out the issue, right? So first understand how you can get there, and then see what you can see out of it, and then see how you can fix the things what you are seeing there. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Sami. Really nice session. Maybe you can send some useful links for the audience if you have any. Or apart from that, yeah, I think for me nothing much. Thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you Lohit again for replying the answers and asking so many questions. And thanks Sami for a wonderful sessions. I think maybe we'll have another session for on Kubernetes in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know if there are any further other topics also. I would be happy to present. And thank you so much for having me, Asif.
And a lot of things to talk. So
yeah,
for sure.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking time and listening to the session. Right. Take care.
Thank you. You guys, our next session is on 4th October, which is on Monday, 7 p.m. There will be, let me share quickly my screen, and it will be on, if you are interested in certifying Kubernetes, there are 2 certifications on Kubernetes as a developer or means administrator. So our next session is going to be become certified on Kubernetes administrator and developer by Mohammed Fazil. He's a cloud solution architect in Microsoft, and he will be discussing on his journey how he got certified on Kubernetes. As a developer, administrator, both. So I think that session will be going to be very interesting if you are really looking into Kubernetes, for development or administrative purpose, or maybe if you have any further questions or in your development environment or production, you can ask. Feel free to ask. Okay, thanks for today. I think I will end for the session now. And thank you again, Sami, for really nice presentation.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.